It's Just Business with Steve Thomas and your host, Chris Larry.
Hello and welcome to another episode of It's Just Business on the Hogstein Network, the show where we look at the dollars and nonsense of the sports media industrial complex, which is increasingly a conversation about the NFL and 3 to 5 streaming services, but we'll get into that in a little bit. First, let me wish you a good morning, Steve.
Yeah, good morning to you too. I just survived the big Texas winter storm last week in the intervening time. It was very cold down here by Texas standards. You know, it was an historic level of awful. I had a water leak.
By most standards, it was cold, I think, right?
But especially South Texas. I mean, it was breaking historic, freeze records, down here, and we're just not used to it down here. So it's very different. I had a pipe leak in the garage, which flooded my garage. But thank God it was only the garage and not the house. So I was very happy about that. But I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we can go back to 70s in shorts down here. Thank God. I never lost power,
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got everything's thawed. Myself, I woke up to probably another 3 to 4 inches of snow. The 12 plus inches of snow that we got in December, early January is still on the ground, and 5 to 8 snowstorms after it. So I am still deep underneath a layer of ice and snow.
Well, my house is hurricane proof, but it's just not freeze proof. You have no idea how heavy my garage door is, for example. It is really thick and really heavy. You couldn't lift it if you had to. It's almost a 2-person job if you have to lift it by hand. But, when it comes to weather, I mean, it's a whole different story down there. Let's hope that never happens again.
Yes, let's hope that never happens again. And hopefully we get a little bit of a warmth and sunlight our way. I wasn't expecting to wake up to snow this morning, so it was a little extra.
Because for those of you who don't know, Chris lives up in...
I'm in the mountains of New York.
Yeah, Chris is up in the middle of nowhere. Former Manhattanite, escaped from the hell that is New York City, and now lives up in the woods like, Jeffrey Dahmer or somebody, or Ted Kaczynski rather.
Steve, how you view me?
You don't look too unlike Ted Kaczynski. I mean, your beard is a little shorter now, I guess, but...
That's probably true. Hopefully a little younger. That'd be the only thing I'd ask.
Well, see, how old was old Teddy when he got busted? He was pretty old, wasn't he?
He's in his 60s, I think.
Yeah, so you're not there yet, but give it another... If we're still doing this show in 10 years, we may make a direct Ted Kaczynski lookalike link.
All right, well then I advice to you all, stay off my list. Everyone laughs at Ted Kaczynski now. All right, let's get on to evildoers in the real world. And we had some, I don't know, salacious, interesting, bizarre stories come out this week having to do with the Washington football team and its former president of football operations, Bruce Allen, which I think, Steve, we both agree was a buried lead in a story about Jeff Bezos. Why don't you catch us up?
Yeah. First of all, this is courtesy of Front Office Sports. So the lead in this story was Bezos, and it's called Jeff Bezos linked to Washington football team sales talk, dated February 27th, AJ Perez. And we've talked about this many times on this show and on the Hog site both. The short format of a really complicated story is that Dan Snyder is in a war that's almost come to shooting, it seems like. With his minority partners. He's alleging that one of his minority partners, Dwight Scharr, was leaking stuff to this Indian website about Dan Snyder being involved with Jeffrey Epstein and sex trafficking. So there's a lawsuit that's primarily based in India that has spurred out to several lawsuits in the United States, mainly which are discovery-related lawsuits. So this story, the lead is that Bezos was linked to this story via phone calls between lawyers, which, from my perspective, is who so what? A lawyer called the lawyer for a billionaire about an NFL team. So what? The bigger story in here is that Bruce Allen is alleged to have had 87 phone calls totaling 22 hours with the investment advisor who is selling the minority shares for the minority shareholders. Now that, and by the way, immediately after Allen got fired. So what they're basically alleging here, they meaning the Snyder side, is that Bruce Allen is intimately involved in the alleged slander that is going on right now that is the subject of the lawsuit. That is a way bigger story than Jeff Bezos. Um, 87 phone calls. That I don't think even spouses call each other that much. That's a lot of phone calls. That is a ton of phone calls. Um, I mean, I just have to think that, I mean, we don't know the subject of the calls, but I just can't imagine it's not about this very subject and that Bruce Allen isn't involved. Why else would there be that many phone calls? Unbelievable. What do you think?
It's kind of a mind blowing amount of phone calls, and time on the phone. Maybe even is as impactful. It it bends your acceptance of reality to say there was not something of significance, negativity towards Dan Snyder being discussed in that much correspondence between these individuals. I mean, it, and it just what it begs is what the heck were they talking about? And we know Bruce was in the crosshairs now with all of the sexual harassment stuff, especially the stuff that has surfaced and been accused of the last couple years, the stuff that got some of the people fired off the front office staff last fall, et cetera, et cetera. So we know Bruce's name has been dragged through the mud. So we also know he's motivated to settle scores, to settle the record. It'd be one thing if Bruce had sort of stayed outside of all of that. Maybe he stays quiet, but he's got reasons. The falling out there must have been historic for that to be happening. And these weren't like the last couple months. These sort of like, you probably know right in front of you, but they may even somewhat overlap his firing or happen within like 3 to 4 weeks of his firing. So fresh right off, getting ousted.
Yeah, well, yes. The calls apparently started right after his firing. What it doesn't say is how long it took to have 22 hours of phone calls. That is not addressed in the story anywhere. But again, I mean, what are they talking? They're not talking about the latest Foo Fighters album, I mean, and Bruce Allen, I don't know Bruce Allen, but the way he's treated the press, the way he's acted in the media, the way he intentionally called Kirk Cousin Kurt, for example, in that one interview, he strikes me as a very vindictive person. A very petty and vindictive person is the way he. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is my opinion about his character based on what I have seen in our dealings, the hog size dealings with the team under his leadership. So, I would absolutely believe that Allen is spilling the beans with this Moog guy about Dan Snyder. Whether or not Allen would stoop to leaking falsified, Jeffrey Epstein child sex rumors to someone is another story. But again, I mean, they're not talking about random things. When you have 22 hours of phone calls with somebody, that's business, and it is coming right on the heels of him getting fired. It's I just wish there was a transcript. I can't wait for Bruce Allen to get deposed. That wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't get deposed in these cases at some point. And it's a darn shame it's not going to be made public because I would love to see it.
Um, yeah, totally. That would be must see TV, even just for sports fans. sports fans
Oh
broadly.
yeah, put it on NBC Washington or
Yeah.
whatever the channel is called now, and that'd be the biggest ratings grabber
It certainly
you
beat
could
their
ever
TV
do.
ratings, their game TV ratings, probably last
Yeah,
few years.
exactly. You get better ratings than Redskins Cowboys.
It also, if he's talking this much to this group and this, this kind of army on Dan Snyder's doorsteps, I also wonder what he's saying. What's the big time lawyer that's doing the investigation's name again?
Beth
For
Wilkinson.
Yeah, it also, he's. I wonder how many hours he's talked to Beth Wilkinson's team, because if he's now looking in protect mode and defense mode and yapping gums mode, that's certainly one where he can do a good amount of damage. So to me, it's like, if he's willing to talk this much, there's other investigations into Dan Snyder where he can be as damaging. And then the
Yeah.
other thing is, oh, go ahead, Steve. Respond to
Well,
that.
I just think that he's got to be careful in that respect because whatever Dan Snyder did, Bruce Allen did too.
Or
Remember
facilitated,
how?
yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, because these two guys were best buddies. They were playing golf in their office. So there's no way that Bruce Allen could come out of this clean. So he may be just vindictive. I don't put it past him to be as vindictive enough to talk to Belthway. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. But he needs to be careful because whatever Dan's guilty of, so is he.
Yeah, and maybe who knows how he's cutting deals, or how he's positioning himself to survive all of this. But the guy, and yes, I think we have lots of evidence that Bruce Allen is vindictive. I mean, this is the guy that wouldn't accept a first round draft pick in return for Cousins just because it was going to go to Shanahan Jr. I mean,
Well, no, that was Trent Williams who you're talking about, right?
no, no, no. When there was a deal for Shanahan Jr. to trade for Kirk Cousins
Oh
on
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
yeah,
the whole Trent Williams thing is partly on Trent,
double,
but it's mostly on Bruce Allen. you know.
yeah. Right, a smart GM would make sure that most people considered it on Trent because there was enough there to hang it on. A
Right.
bad general manager accepts all the blame. That's
Right.
the real problem. But I don't know if it's one last thing, but a thing on this that I think is key, and I think we probably talked about. I mean, no, we talked about the story, but I think one of our angles probably at the time was that Snyder better be careful because he opens up this many can of worms, right? And going after the Shar and the Indian marketing, web digital team and all that. All that does is open up these lines of inquiry and investigation, and that he starts. And here we are down the road with Bruce Allen. I mean, if we're talking about Bruce being scared, but Dan Schneider, he better worry. That his number one guy, his his
The guy who knows
concierge
all the
just
secrets.
just spoke for 22 hours to one of his enemies.
Yeah. Let me summarize just for everybody here. Here's the things that are going on simultaneously. Number one, there's an arbitration proceeding in which the NFL is involved between Dan Snyder, Dwight Schrute, Robert Rathman, and Fred Smith, the FedEx guy. That arbitration has to do with Dan Snyder's attempt to exercise his right of first refusal on the sale of the minority shares. That's number one. Number two is the Beth Wilkinson investigation, which is led by the NFL investigating the sexual harassment climate in the building in Ashburn. And number three is this Indian lawsuit. The lawsuit that's based in India about the Jeffrey Epstein stories about Snyder. The Indian lawsuit has, as I said earlier, spawned a bunch of separate lawsuits in federal court all around the country that are not really separate lawsuits. They're just discovery. They're just discovery disputes, all being linked to the Indian lawsuit. So that is what Dan Snyder's involved in simultaneously. And Chris, you are so right about, if Dan Snyder's going to create all of these things, be involved in all these things simultaneously, he really needs to be careful. Because, Bruce Allen in particular knows whatever secret Dan Snyder has, Bruce Allen knows it. And yeah, I mean, like we said, I mean, what are you talking about with somebody over, 22 hours? Dan came up in those calls. So, Again, they're not talking about the Foo Fighters, or
Yeah.
the Celtics or somebody. They're talking about Dan Snyder for 22 hours. So it's I'm hoping and praying for our sake and the sake of this show that some of this becomes public and soon. Please, somebody leak this to us.
Well, if there's one thing you can guarantee in the, kind of in the last 25 years of Washington football team culture and all of the rest, is that stuff will leak. It's been one of the most leakiest organizations and sports companies, sports businesses on the face of the earth. So we'll know. I think we may not know. We're not going to read transcripts necessarily, but the key parts will get released somehow.
The Indian lawsuit stuff will. The arbitration probably won't. The NFL has historically done pretty well in keeping those arbitrations closed. And by the way, the other person's involved in this we neglected to mention is Jessica McLuhan, who's the wife of former drunken GM Scott McLuhan, allegedly drunken GM Scott McLuhan. She's apparently involved in a bunch of phone calls with these people too. So, and certainly Jessica, I would assume, hates Dan Snyder with the fire of 1,000 suns, because she's not been shy about that on Twitter, and so at least before I got off of Twitter, she wasn't shy about it. So that's the other part of it. But like we never learned the results of McLuhan's arbitration, for example, because that was closed, and we never learned what happened. So we may not learn what happens in the arbitration, but we'll definitely know about the Indian lawsuit stuff for sure.
I can't. Can you imagine the Animal House culture that was there with McLuhan and his wife and Bruce and Jay and Dan, and that must have been,
It's amazing
was,
anything got done.
yeah. What it is. It was this Animal House.
It's How does anything get done? How is it a professional environment? As we subsequently found out, it wasn't a professional environment at all. They're playing. They're grabbing, reporters and, harassing women and, playing golf in the office at, in the middle of the day and, drinking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's like it all, look, I gotta be honest, and forgive me, Washington PR, if you're listening to this, but all of this is Dan Snyder's fault ultimately. I don't blame him for somebody slandering him. That's not his fault. But this culture in the office in Ashburn is his fault. You are the owner. You are responsible. You could have and should have put the kibosh on all of it and said, we are going to be a professionally run organization. All this nonsense stops. The problem with Dan, he's never been in charge of anything. Don't forget where Dan got his money. You remember, right? Dan got his money from a marketing company that was basically, telemarketing. In essence, that's what he was doing. And he's not run a professional organization, really. So I don't think he really knew what he was doing. I don't think he still doesn't really know what he's doing. His mentor is Jerry Jones, for God's sakes. So all of this ultimately comes back on Dan, and this is the reason why Washington has been a horrible team for decades. It's because it starts at the top. If you have look at the Patriots. This doesn't happen with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft in charge. They know how to run an organization and win. Washington is the opposite of that. And if you really want to know really and truly why Washington does not win, it's this.
Oh, 100%. That's not even, that's not even sort of up for debate. Yeah, and this is just it's just gonna get wilder. I mean, he is the Great Plains of exposed risk. He's got so much risk exposure. Which normally he seems to be tolerant of a good amount of risk exposure, just his normal operating procedures. And this is like to the power of 10 of his normal operating. So, it's just like nobody smart at business allows them this much surface area for risk. Risk management and risk aversion is like, in the golden rule of business management. So it's mind boggling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just can't imagine any CEO would let of worth his salt or her salt would let all this happen. It's unbelievable to think that. I guess they really need to be thankful Ron Rivera is in charge of the football side. Think about how he insulated the team from all this. Not this could have brought the whole franchise down, and they really need to be thankful that Ron Rivera took charge of football and just told his player, we're ignoring all this. We're going to focus on football on the field, and whatever happens to the ownership is whatever happens. It's sort of how Ron operated. He didn't talk about this stuff. He didn't mention it. He didn't breathe one single word about it for an entire year. So thank God for that. But yeah, I mean, no CEO worth his salt would let all this stuff happen simultaneously. It's crazy. It's just,
yes.
it's an embarrassment is what it is. It's a complete and total embarrassment, and really and truly, this won't happen. But I mean, if the NFL really wants to protect the Shield, they'd get Dan Snyder out of there. They'd put pressure on him to leave, because this is just, it's a complete, it's you want to talk about tarnishing the shit. You want to talk about, like we've done, IJB crime blotters every once in a while. That pales in comparison to what is going on in the front office in Washington right now. Some guy gets, in trouble for a DUI or whatever, and yeah, sure, it's bad, but that, from a PR perspective, this is way worse for the NFL.
I totally agree. I think the now this is with a caveat that we know far from everything. More will come out. The story, we're really we're not even at halftime necessarily with some of what might come out on some of this. But if you read the NFL tea leaves, to me, they're lining up to support Snyder. I think if you look, I don't like, so I think you're exactly right. That's what I think should happen. That's what I want to happen. That's what I think ultimately would be best for the NFL. I don't think that's what they think, and I think you're starting to see the slow narrative build of when they give this guy a slap on the wrist and really take the Shield more as a self-protective, if you're inside the circle, already, we're going to go down fighting for you. I think that's what's going to happen. Now, more can come out, of course, but right now, that looks like the trend to me.
Yeah, I think if they were going to get rid of him, it would have happened by now already. They wouldn't have let this go on for a year. They would have gotten rid of it. Now, like you said, if something awful comes out about Beth Wilkins' investigation nobody knows about, I don't even want to make up something, as an example. I don't want anybody to construe an example of mine as an allegation, so I'm not going to say anything. But if something awful comes out, they could get rid of him. But I don't think Beth Wilkinson is going to uncover anything awful. I just don't think that's going to happen. She's going to... about Dan Snyder personally, even if there is something, she's not going to find it. So I just think, I think the NFL has already decided that they're going to keep him. And this Beth Wilkinson thing is going to not amount to much. She's going to write a report, and the NFL is going to go, shake their head at Dan and fine him $1 million or something, and then that'll be it. That's what I think.
Well, if the continued luck of Washington football team fans continues, what will happen is we'll get penalties that affect the on the field product. There'll be a draft picks or salary cap penalty or something. We'll pay. That'll be the eventual outcome. Yeah, I totally agree. And don't forget, Beth Wilkinson, she's got her past relationship with the league, and I don't say this to besmirch her. Why would I? And there's no need to. But she represented the league in concussion cases, and wrote reports that said that the league was not culpable and wasn't responsible for reasons X, Y, and Z. So this is a trusted NFL lawyer who has protected the Shield before.
Yeah, her mission is not to uncover all the dirt. Her mission is to bury the dirt. Okay? She's not trying to destroy the NFL. This is not an opposing counsel here trying to destroy the league. This is a league insider who's trying to do barely enough to get the league out of hot water. That's what's going on here. That's why I said before, you just articulated it better than I did, but that's why I said before, Beth Wilkinson isn't going to find anything. She's not. And for the reasons you just said better than I did. That's why.
Yeah. Or they'll be able to scapegoat the worst of it on,
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Nothing's going to come out that's earth-shattering.
And guess what? Who's set up as the possible patsy to bring this to close? Bruce Allen. So that's Bruce Snyder. Yeah, Bruce Allen. Right. So that's why he's singing a song to anyone that can help.
Can you imagine talking to anybody on the phone for
No,
87 hours? Anybody, like I said, even like spouses aren't going to talk that much on the phone, you
no, I
know?
haven't. I haven't seen my parents in almost a year and a half. We can randomly do that soon, so don't feel too bad for me. But and I would be. I don't think even if you count
Have you talked
text.
to them for 87 hours
No,
over the.
I think even if you count text messages, I think you'd be getting right maybe around there. It might fall in that ballpark, but jeez
You and
Louise.
I have done a show every 2 weeks for years, and, you know, we've done like. We haven't done 87 hours this year. There's no way we've done that much.
No, in aggregate, it's not. It'd be more than that, but it wouldn't be
Well, this is show
significantly.
101.
Yeah,
This is episode 101, and so we've done 101 plus hours over what 3 years?
I think four, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so there you go. So, who knows? Maybe they had a very personal reason to be on the phone that much.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Who are we? Who are we to say? But we can jump it up a level and talk about some reasons why it doesn't matter how good a business person Dan Snyder is, because it's very difficult for him to lose money owning an NFL team, and that of course means we're talking TV contracts, which is always a slow boiling story, but is bubbling over now because they got to get this stuff figured out, especially with the pressure of the 17 game season. That's applying a little bit of pressure here in an interesting way. But we've got new details on a bunch of fronts. Disney looked like they were holding out. No, look, now they look like they're first in the pool.
Yeah. So we talked about the NFL TV contracts last show and the show before, but everything was in flux. And now what has happened is there are not signed contracts, but there is a broad-based agreement in principle on two major points between the NFL and all of its partners. Now, Disney, as Chris said, was the last holdout, but Disney and the NFL have reached an agreement. And so now what we have here is CBS and Fox keep the Sunday afternoon packages. NBC is keeping the Sunday night football. Thursday night football, nobody wants that, so that's going to get dumped to Amazon. And then the NFL Network has to have some programming, so it's going to be simulcast Amazon NFL Network, and then ESPN and ABC are back in the game. Disney bargained to get itself into the Super Bowl rotation, so now ABC will be in the Super Bowl rotation, and like ESPN keeps Monday Night Football. Now, what was interesting about it is that apparently the amount of increase that the NFL charged Disney was a lot less than the amount charged to the other networks, and the reason was that ESPN was already paying a ginormous rights fee, much bigger compared on a pro rata basis than was CBS and Fox. And so what they have done here is they've sort of evened out the money between all the networks. So Disney paid an increase of a little less to sort of even things out. So that's what we're going to see now for sure, is CBS, Fox having Sunday night. Thursday moves to Amazon and NFL Network. ESPN keeps Monday Night Football. ABC in the Super Bowl rotation. What that's going to do, that's going to create a massive, massive increase in the salary cap. Not this year. This year's salary cap is going to be $180 million because of the COVID-19 related losses. But in the next 3-4 years, it's going to be a huge increase. So, like, if you guys are worried about your $40 million quarterback on your team, don't. Because in 3 or 4 years, that'll be the norm. But that's the structure of it. Now, apparently, by the way, if you want to read about this, we read this in Sports Business Journal. Disney NFL reach agreement on new rights deal by John Oran Friday, February 26th. That is in front of their paywall for now, that story, so you can actually read it for now. So that's the story. But anyway, apparently there's going to be an announcement in the coming few days about this, which means that they're not worried about getting the contract signed, and it's just a matter of getting lawyers to write a bunch of clauses at this point. So it's basically a done deal.
Yeah, and what's it estimated between 2.4 and 2.6 billion?
Oh, yeah, I didn't give the numbers, did I? Sorry. Okay. Um, the Disney deal is around, let's see, 2.6 billion a year. That's Disney. Now total, see, CBS, Fox, and NBC are all paying around 2 billion for their packages. So if you start to add up numbers, total that is over 8 billion, close to 9 billion. It looks like a year. Just and that's even without Amazon. So you got to figure they're talking 10 billion a year, right? In ballpark figures. That's about what it is total.
Yeah, and none of this is shocking. In fact, I think the many times we talked about this really over the last year to 2 years, or pretty much the entire run of the show to some degree, at different times in the negotiation, etc. But and the media landscape has even changed in that. But this is kind of for the last 6 to 8 months exactly what we said was going to happen. That the major networks will keep their current packages. There'll be some back and forth with Disney and some, kind of back and forth on Thursday Night Football. But we also said that of the big streamers, Amazon was the clearest one to be the sort of first in on this next deal with then these other networks, which we can talk about in a bit. But these other networks also have their own expanded digital streaming packages. So they're already there, and that's a big reason for their spend. But in terms of it's almost to the book of what we said. And we also said that there will be some, and we still don't know this yet. You will see more NFL football on ABC. Steve mentioned the Super Bowl rotation, which is giant for Disney, just humongous for them. Look at some of the vertical integration this year with the Paramount launch and the what was the other? What was that? Oh, a lot of Nickelodeon stuff, which is in their family of brands. So you're going to see something very similar on a Super Bowl broadcast with all of Disney's holdings, which you can only imagine. So it's already a streaming strategy for all the players, but it's exactly who we thought. We'll just see how many games show up on ABC is the only kind of small question.
Yeah, I undersold what Disney bought a little bit. So the article states what Chris just said, which is, quote, an undetermined number of regular season games will be simulcast on ABC, which will produce a Super Bowl for the first time since 2006. So we don't really know what that means. I don't know if they know what that means yet. That just means some of these games are going to be thrown to ABC. Wouldn't surprise me if some of that is Monday Night Football, probably. It's going to be the same crews. I even forget who's in the booth anymore in
Yeah.
Monday Night Football, but regardless, it's certainly going to be that. It wouldn't surprise me if some of these like late season, there's no college football. Let's have a game on Saturday type games will probably be on ESPN. The streaming rights stuff. Oh, by the way, the rumor is that DirecTV is not going to re-up with for the streaming. What's the Sunday ticket? And that doesn't surprise me, considering there's been very expensive litigation going back years between the NFL and DirecTV about this. So they're going to probably, the rumor is that NFL's going to sell the streaming rights to a bunch of people, which they should have done years ago. They wanted to do years ago, but couldn't because they couldn't get rid of DirecTV. So that's a part of it. But yeah, I think we called this pretty much exactly, Chris. What we said was expect this TV cycle to be mostly the traditional networks with some increased streaming rights to Amazon. I think if you fast forward to the next agreement 10 years from now, the landscape's going to be totally different. We're going to see principal broadcast streaming only. It's going to be dramatically different, but it's just a little bit too early in the development to get away from the networks right now. And so that's what's reflecting. But also, in terms of salary cap, now remember, the NFL lost a butt ton of money because of COVID-19. Instead of totally nuking the salary cap this year and reducing it tens of millions of dollars, they're spreading the loss over several years, understanding that loss is going to be overtaken by the dramatic increase in TV rights. So, in essence, this is going to be the only real year where we see a COVID-19 effect on the salary cap, because all the rest of the years, the next 3 or 4 years, it's going to be offset and more by this increased TV revenue.
Which if you'll allow me 60 seconds to talk about the ramifications on the field. But
That's why we're here.
it's actually kind of exciting for Washington because they're in fifth best in the league in cap, and there is going to be bargains galore. There is going to be so much talent on the street because of these salary cap cuts across the league that a smart, and I can't say that they are necessarily yet, but a smart pro player personnel department is going to go bargain hunting and really could potentially improve their team for a year to 2 years here in this off season. It's going to be a free agent market like we've never seen, just because of how much salary cap ramifications are going to happen in this short term course correct.
Yeah. You'll have to listen to the hog side.
That's right. There's a little shout out. Yeah, it's if you it's the last thing the NFL has to dominate, which I think they're just about to cut the head off every other sport in terms of their off-season buzz. Right, it's about to push the NBA off the off-season intrigue list for sure. And own all 12 months of the year fully.
Well, that's a good point because the NBA has historically had a great off season. I don't watch the NBA anymore for political reasons, but they've kind of owned they do go silent for a couple months, but for 3 months, the NBA is talked about every day, on sports talk and whatnot. And the NFL, the NFL's always historically been a little bit of a slow burn as compared to like a firestorm from the NBA, I guess. But yeah, it's with more money to be with more money to be thrown around. The NFL free agency is going to go bonkers.
Yeah. Not to mention
not this year, but in the coming years, it will.
So good stuff there. I think what's super interesting is I think here's how you'll start to see that move to what Steve was saying in 10 years happen in the next 10 months. Is don't be surprised if you can watch whatever, I guess the Monday night and whatever flex games they may have as part of this deal and flex rights basically to ABC. You're going to see those games. You're going to be able if you're a Disney Plus subscriber and if you're a Disney Plus Hulu plus ESN subscriber, which is one of the packages, you're going to be able to watch the Disney NFL product on Disney Plus. Directly, right when you hit Disney Plus homepage, it'll be right next to Iron Man and Luke Skywalker. So you're going to start to see the expanded viewing possibilities. Now, Paramount just launched, or basically, no, that's not true. Rebranded from CBS All Access, and expanded their library. So all these things
on March 4th, I believe.
Yeah,
but yeah,
the rebrand, right? So, and if you watched the Super Bowl, you saw their commercials climbing up a mountain, celebrity mountain climbing or whatever. And you're gonna be able to watch NFL games pretty much on whatever device you want by next fall.
Yes. And part of the reason why it hasn't happened yet is the DirecTV package. Understand that DirecTV locked a lot of that stuff up, and that's why you can't stream these games very easily. But all that's going to go away. This is why the NFL is so desperate to get away from DirecTV. I mean, first of all, DirecTV is a Titanic that just got hit by an iceberg, and it's going to go under. In today's day and age, there's no reason to have a satellite dish on your house. It's totally unnecessary. And if they don't have the exclusive rights to the NFL, who on earth is going to do that? So I think DirecTV is going to die. They'll get bought out and the technology be, swallowed by someone else. But I think it's going to go away. So, yeah, I think this is just a harbinger of things to come. This Amazon Prime streaming Thursday Night Football thing is just a harbinger of things to come. I do think that Chris is right. I think because every network, maybe Fox doesn't, but NBC has Peacock Network, or the Peacock Plus. But Paramount Plus is CBS All Access. It's basically a rebadged CBS All Access. And then obviously you have Disney and ESPN Plus. You're going to be able to stream these games on all these networks like you could not do before. And it's only a matter of time. If Fox doesn't have one of these, they will. I don't know if they do or not, but if they do, it's not.
They don't. Not like these.
But I can guarantee you they're coming up with something. And so if you fast forward a few years, it's going to be probably the primary way people are viewing television. Probably. Um, so the NFL, it's just too early right now for all that to happen now. Um, but I mean, the revenue increase. It's the NFL is the king. And by the way, the most valuable package, if you guys didn't realize, is Sunday Night Football. Financially, Sunday Night Football is the biggest television program on the air on a weekly basis. It's the Sunday Night Football package, more so than Monday night. Sunday night is. It used to be Monday was the Monday Night Football is a preeminent game, but since it's been on ESPN so long, which is cable, they've kind of lost it. Sunday night is the prime game now, so that's the most valuable. It gets the biggest ratings. It's the number one property in television. Um, so I think we're going to see even more of the marquee matchups than ever before on that Sunday night game. I think on the
Uh,
Sunday night slot rather.
networks aren't going away; they're just evolving, right? So we NBC, these things that we understand kind of conceptually as a brand as NBC aren't dying. It's just that satellite dishes and cable boxes are dying. But everyone,
Here's an example. I just read I'm a huge fan of the show Frasier. I think Frasier is one of the greatest, most well written and well produced shows in television.
well, then you're in luck.
Yeah, because Frasier's coming back, but it's not coming. It's coming back only to the Paramount Plus network. And that's that property's a big enough thing. They could put with considering the garbage and just absolute just direct that's on network TV right now. They could put that on network TV if they wanted to. They're intentionally drawing you in and that may make me subscribe to Paramount just to be able to watch the rebooted Frasier series. But I think that's a decent sign. Years ago, that would have definitely been on network television. One of the most popular franchises of all time. The Frasier Crane character is the longest running character in network television history. The character of Frasier Crane. The fact that it's just on Paramount Plus is a sign about how important these networks view their online streaming properties. And the NFL is a part of it.
Yeah, and live sports is a battleground. So I mean, and and because it's also a different model. So when I was saying you're going to be able to watch an NFL game on your streaming service, it won't be, as Steve said, it won't be the out of market. That's still to be determined. You will be able to purchase that in some way, but that's the one big contract that's left out there to deal with. But you will be able, because of the combination of your streaming service on your device and that they make you turn location services on, you will be able to watch what would have been, this weird antiquated to future crossover. So they will know what market you're in by your location data services. Yes, and if you're like a little hacky, you can get around that, but most people don't. So the device sees your location services. It then knows what game you would be regionally served through what we understand as CBS, and still let you watch that game on your phone through your Paramount Plus or whatever. That you'll be able to do next fall, and we will probably know soon enough how you'll be able to purchase the out of market games and what new service contract.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, so what we're gonna if you buy the Paramount Plus network, you have their NFL package. You're not gonna have a whole slate of games. What you're gonna see on there is whatever game you're supposed to get on your local CBS affiliate is what you're gonna get, and it'll be through the magic of the internet. Interwaves. Is how they're gonna know. Where you are. So that's right. And then I would imagine, just to forecast here, I think what the NFL, see if you agree with me, Chris, what the NFL is going to do is take the package that they're selling to DirecTV now. They're going to sell it to Comcast, Time Warner, and AT&T, to put it in, and you're going to see that package available on Xfinity, Time Warner Cable, and then AT&T Uverse system at a minimum. Those three, I think, is what they're going to sell. And if they do that, then they're going to cover almost every cable TV household in the country between those three packages.
Can you imagine? I think that would be, I think that's very possible, probably probable. And I think it'd be the smartest thing for the NFL to do. So I think if they're thinking about it in a smart way, they would do that. And essentially at that point, I mean, so what do we have Amazon, CBS, NBC, ABC. So we have four service contracts, four packages.
Did you say ESPN? It's
Well,
Fox,
Disney,
CBS,
Disney, yeah.
ESPN, Disney, Amazon. Okay, yeah.
So we're 4 or 5, whatever. But if you do that model, what you just mentioned, that gives them, what is that? Potentially 4 to 5 additional sales points, points of purchases,
Right.
and those packages, especially if they lock them in long term, are potentially as lucrative over time or close. They may have been just in that plan, they may have doubled their market.
And I'm probably forgetting somebody too. There's probably another cable provider out there that I just not coming to me. So yeah, that's right. And this is, by the way, why the NFL tried to get out of the DirecTV package years ago. Because when they've been with DirecTV since the '90s, I believe it's the late '90s,
It's
isn't it? The
20
late
years
'90s.
at least, yeah, minimum.
Yeah, and it was just a different technological world back then. Back then it probably seemed like a great idea to offer any kind of stream, any sort of select your game package was unheard of back then. But the NFL saw through that years ago, like 10 years ago, and that's why there was the big DirecTV in NFL lawsuit. And what it really had to do with was the cost, the cost of the cable package and so forth. But what they were really trying to do is get out of it so they could sell the package. And if they are smart, that's what they will do. What Chris and I are suggesting, which is sell to everybody, because then you have essentially everybody in the country will be able to watch every game, and that's what they want.
Right. Which is how
And
every
it's
other
more
sport
money.
operates
Yeah,
already.
because every other sport in Major League Baseball, like we in my house buy the Major League Baseball package every year because we have multiple people here who we watch baseball. We love baseball, but you can buy that same in Major League Baseball offers a couple of different packages. They offer MLB TV, and then what we buy is the MLB Extra Innings package. And it's through various platforms. You can either stream it only online, you can get it through your cable TV, or both. I think ours is both. I know ours is both. That's what the NFL needs. The NBA has something similar to that, and that's what the NFL knows they need to do, and that's what will happen for sure. I'd bet the house. I'd bet every penny I own. No, I wouldn't. I would bet a amount of money that matters to me that you will see what I suggested, which is it will be available on every cable platform that you can dream up. Maybe there's more than the three I mentioned. There probably are, but though the big players are Comcast, which is Xfinity, Time Warner, and then AT&T. Those are the big players in cable TV market.
Yeah. So I totally agree. And that'll be short lived. So NFL, learn from your past mistakes and sign that as a 3 to 5 year contract, because then by the time those things will be completely useless in that time frame, and then you can just sell the package to Amazon or Apple at that point, for King's ransom.
Like I've said before, Chris, I mean, at some point, it's fine to say people are cutting the cord and everything, but one thing that people get tired of are having a million different subscriptions. And what would be very smart is for someone to think about bundling all of these packages together, which shockingly enough has been done, which is cable TV. So what I really think, you're not going to see cable TV disappear. What we're going to see is cable TV evolve into a different platform. But it's still going to be, you can subscribe, pay Comcast to broadcast into your home. It'll just be through a series of subscriptions to things like Paramount Plus rather than what it is now. But I don't think cable TV as kind of a fundamental concept is going anywhere. You're still going to bring it into your house, just in a different way.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it'd be really super interesting to see when there's that course correct, and then when they hit user exhaustion, which is really their number one. Because right now, I mean, I think if you listen to the show at any amount of time, you know that I'm into many things. So and budget accordingly, and even I'm like confused, exhausted, and overspending. There will be, you can't have this land grab into this this many services and not have some sense making and price point readjustment for consumers. I don't know, that will happen in some capacity.
Well, and if you've listened to this show, you know that I am the opposite. People laugh at me for having cable TV, but I have decided is our entertainment comes from cable. I'm not subscribing to all these things. Whatever we have is what we have. And so if we added up the dollars, I bet you the dollars you and I are spending are probably not that much differently. We're just spending it in different ways.
You're spending
You know,
less, I can pretty confidently say. And I don't mean
maybe
that
so.
even like in a way that like just because you're cheap. I'm saying like I have basically, and part of it is I actually can't where I'm at right now. It's be not impossible, but it's a pain in the ass for me to hook up cable. So partly it was also just like a practical matter to do it this way. So basically to rebuild what I had access to, like let's call it 5 to 7 years ago with cable and then with DVRs and on demand. So basically to equate that level of service I had in 2015, let's call it.
You've got a million subscriptions to
I
all
got a
sorts of
million
things.
subscriptions. I guarantee
Right.
you it's more expensive than even the most maxed out, even throw in a sports package cable bill.
Yeah, maybe so. And mine is bundled with a home phone, which I have chosen to have for various reasons, and then my Wi-Fi is all bundled in there. So if you broke out just the cable part of that, yeah, I bet you're spending more.
Oh, definitely,
Probably so.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm still paying Spectrum, which is our, cable equivalent here. $80 a month for the level of broadband I need. So that like
Yeah. Yeah, and so the macro level point here is don't expect cable TV to go away. You just expect it to evolve, and what you're going to have is Time Warner, and like Xfinity is already doing it. Like I get the Peacock Plus network, the Peacock Plus service. I didn't ask for it; it just appeared in my cable package. So now I have it loaded onto my iPad. The Peacock Plus, and I can access their content, but it's all bundled through cable, and that is the future. Disney and Xfinity are going to get together and make a deal at some point. The NFL and Time Warner will make a deal at some point, and it'll all come together all in one neat package because just as Chris said, there's going to be a break point about when people get tired of having a billion subscriptions, and it just makes people feel better if it's all bundled into one. It's inevitable, and it is the future.
it's cable as a concept will return. Cable obviously as a delivery mechanism is dead.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, that's right. And I think what'll holding a lot of people back is the local TV. A lot of people like their local TV, but that's come to the point where that's getting bundled into things
Yeah.
too.
Hulu does
Now,
it well right now. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's not going to hold anybody back, anymore. And the downside of what I have is I have probably 100 channels I've never watched. There's a bunch of for example, there's a bunch of foreign language channels that I watch TV in English only. I do speak some Spanish, but I don't watch that, and so I can't. I'm paying for that anyway. And so it's going to be a little bit more tailored, I think, than it is now. That'll be a benefit because. Like Bruce Springsteen did a song 20 years ago. It was
Yeah.
57 channels and nothing's on. Remember that?
Yeah, totally.
That we're kind of to that point only. Now it's like 200 channels and nothing's on.
Yeah, and that's one thing that streamers have done smart. I think is they've taken a library approach, not a programming approach. So all those things now exist, right? All that foreign language stuff. One of Netflix's key strategies is buying up tons of foreign language, licensing tons of foreign language television, and presenting it to international audiences that aren't its home audience. I mean, that's a global strategy that's working huge for them right now. And so those programs sit right next to each other, but you don't have to engage. You're not having to sort of rely on what a programmer is putting on at 10 p.m. on Thursday, right? On those channels, so you can actually still service all that content to whoever wants it without annoying people by having it on at a set time.
Well, take the Frasier reboot as an example. 20 years ago, well, 20 years ago, the original Frasier was on, but if you rearrange the schedule here, what they would do is program the Frasier reboot to be on at 8 o'clock on Wednesday or Thursday, most likely, one of those 2 days, because those are the big TV days. But now you're going to stream it on Paramount Plus. You can watch it all at once. You know, that's the future. And where we're going with the sports thing is the NFL will blend right into that, and you will be able at some point, basically, you will be able to stream every game on every platform. On a variety of platforms. That is the future. We're not there yet. You got to fast forward about half a decade for that to start to come into focus. But to wrap this up, the now that we know, the current structure is this: Fox, CBS broadcasts on their network Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon games. ESPN and ABC both, in some combination, will broadcast Monday Night Football. Amazon will broadcast the Thursday night game in conjunction with the NFL Network. And then the Super Bowl rotation is Fox, CBS, NBC, ABC. That is the future for about the next several years.
By the way, the original Frasier just barely was on 20 years ago. Its last season kicked off in September 23rd, 2003. So it's almost been 20 years off the air.
Wow, yeah.
Just to age,
great show.
Right, just to age us. If you hadn't guessed already. It's super fascinating. We'll see where all this goes. It's sort of developing weekly. You guys talked about it last week. We talked about the show before the last show. And the amount that's changed in these deals in that month's time is pretty significant. And, you factor in the rollout of more of these streaming services, and it'll be interesting. And the sports is still the battleground for live eyeballs, and live eyeballs will still be a premium sales for ads or whatever the monetization system is. And
the reason for that is because you can't fast forward through live ads.
So it's not surprising, and I'm not going to get political, but it's not surprising that sports and news are the battleground for are the last vestiges of live eyeballs, and thus will be battlegrounds.
Well, this is why I've always been to not get political, but this is why I'm always an advocate for sports networks to stay out of politics. Pick your side. I'm on the right, Chris is on the left. Pick your side. Doesn't matter. If you want to keep the most live eyeballs on TV on a live game, don't alienate the other half that you're not on. That's the problem. You can, just to even it out here, like NASCAR has a reputation as being kind of a right-leaning thing. The NBA has a reputation as being a left-leaning thing. I think both are true. If the sport networks were smart, they would get out of it entirely. Just do games. Don't let your players be advocates for causes and positions. That alienates people. If you get the maximum amount of eyeballs on your product, just stick to entertainment. Do not advocate for causes. Let them do that in their own time. That is the way to get the most people watching. That's why I've been an advocate for that for so long. Just entertain me. Do not try to educate me. And frankly, my soapbox on this is, if you're listening to athletes to get educated on social and political causes, you need to find a new source of your education, okay? Because most of them, listen, there's better sources. There's better ways to get educated than some basketball player.
That's Today in Media Literacy with Steve.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think we've reached our logical conclusion here. Steve, just give people an update on what off-season mode is for the Hogsty.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we are down to the Hogsty show itself. We are on 1 day a week now through the rest of the off season. The shows are released Monday. Seasons of Discontent, which is Rick Snyder's look at all things Washington, D.C. sports and life, it will be in hiatus through March. When free agency kicks off, they will be back for a little bit. And then we have our regular written content. We have a new writer, who's going to be doing Dave Earl, who's going to be doing, he's going to be focusing on opinions and the views of fans through the prism of his opinions. So look for that. And we have all of our regular written content that has to do with free agency and the draft and all that stuff we normally do.
Awesome. You should have no lack of things to talk about. And I say that without the negativity that I would have said it normally. It actually should be a fairly interesting football offseason with lots of good storylines. And just to follow up, just as we're endorsing the Hogsty, I totally wanted to agree with you. Like, Ron Rivera for Executive of the Year, have you ever seen someone firewall the S-Storm and while actually growing value? And, maybe you could put Jason Wright in that, right? So that whole the firewalling here between Snyder and everything else is if you just kind of look at it clinically, is pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I give it more credit to Rivera than anybody else.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. It would have brought a lot of teams down completely.
Yes, totally. So, yay, Ron Rivera, Executive of the Year, not just Coach of the Year.
Absolutely.
And with that, we will see you in 2 weeks.